welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight I have a guest with me that I'm sure honestly needs no introduction, but I'm going to let her give one anyway. And it is my distinct honor, my pleasure, and my blessing to introduce you all to Jenny Lee the Seer.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little cold here in Minnesota, but we're getting through the winter. Hopefully spring is around the corner. That'd be nice.
Well, at least you guys are consistent. Here we'll have warm days, then it'll go cold, and then it'll go back to warm, then it'll go cold again for the winter. So at least you guys have a consistent season.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I think actually this winter has been very light for snow.
Really?
Very light. Yeah. Very light for snow. So it's been a different process here for that. So yeah.
Well, Colleen Thompson says, "Hello, Miss Jenny."
Hey, Colleen. It's
And
good to see her.
Amy Benson says, "Hi, Jenny." Wow, you got a lot of fans popping in.
Well, I shared the link, so we'll see. We'll see what it brings tonight, right?
So I would like, if you could, for those who, may be new to esoterics and everything, could you give a little background of who you are and what you do for the audience?
Yeah. So I believe and I feel I was my soul was sent here into a physical vessel when I was very, very young to do a job here for the light. And I still hold a lot of the memory of that energy. And so when I started developing young, they always told me to follow their voice, follow their light, follow their lead to things. And I've always been, I would say, a difficult child of being very direct on the path that I wanted to stay on. I wasn't changing my mind for man's rules and ethics. It stayed on a consistent path. So I started seeing at a very young age, and I just trusted and rolled out with it. And then as I got older, seeing through energy, seeing through people, seeing other beings of spirits, I just stayed consistent. But like I try to tell people, I don't know what it's like to be alone, because I don't know what that feeling feels like, because I've always had that presence around me from a young child and had these phenomenal situations at a young age. So it's funny how people say, you're given a choice. I'm like, I don't feel like I was given a choice. I feel like they're like, this is it. This is your path. And you may try to go a different direction, but we're going to move you right back to where you're supposed to be on your path. So I was seeing light beings. I saw Yeshua at a very young age, and interacted with that. And so I would say my road had a lot of stones and swords in the way of going against the program, but I stayed on my path. And it seems to me that I believe everybody has to go through a certain path. And it's not that you've made mistakes on the way. It's just those were obstacles that you were supposed to learn from to get over. And then you have the lesson to look back and reflect on where you are and what you overcame in this process. So I had just been kind of not picking a category, spirituality, mediumship, or the commercial side of these platforms or anything. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do it my way, and I'm not going to claim one side or the other. I'm just going to stay on the path that they put in front of me. And that's what I teach too, to take their own path and listen to their own instinct and follow their own truth. And they don't have to match up with everybody's stuff. They just got to choose it and the instinct of within that inner voice. So I just started at a young age seeing visuals and speaking and seeing death come and saying when they are going to die, or how I see spirits, or like at a very young age, like I said, I had no one around me to explain things. So as a young child, I buried dolls that my mom would buy me and just bury them in the ground, because I felt like that was a way to help the spirits move on. I was looking for some kind of understanding. And then I moved on from that process, and I'd say stubbornness really resided in me, in a truth of saying no in such a stronger way. And then at that age, I really was compelled to be around animals more than I was humans. My communication the comfort was being around animals. So I have that animal communication perspective that I see and communicate with daily. So that's always something that I need around me constantly, is animals. I think that's more my comfort. Then evolving and changing, but always listening to that instinct and speaking the words. But I wasn't taught by anybody. No spiritual teachers, nothing like that. I was just put in those lessons with spirit. Not until I got into my early 20s, and I started, sorry, saying what I said, what I see in a group setting, and then around, I guess, a spiritual group, and then saying what I was seeing, and then that made them feel uncomfortable because I was seeing through that, the vessel. And at that time, I realized that it was more of a, in some of these processes, more to entertain than it is to be honest about it. So I couldn't take that route. So I just kept seeing what I needed to see, saying what I needed to say. And then I started getting into images of drawing things out, writing things out. And then it really threw me into missing persons, just like a ton of bricks. And when we get into these, because I'm a physical medium, when you channel through, your accent changes, your whole body language changes. You become that vessel, and they translate language different sometimes. So I started getting into cases and translating their information that the client understood that I didn't know the language. And it led to a lot of cases of information by detail. And then it just, the documentation started following all this. I think with seers, mediums, we're always in this process in a different conscience of always listening and always having this conversation in our head with spirit. And then sometimes you're in a public process around people, and you're just saying it, just saying what you're feeling, what you're saying, what you're getting. And people around you start to react to that when they see it comes to light, or it comes to present time and day. And I was talking about stuff that I was seeing with cases and people missing, and then they would show up in the paper the way I described it. So, like, again, I don't think some of us have a choice to deny this process. We're just shown this information. So it's just been consistent on my own path, and then evolving into artifacts and wills and trying to find stuff on properties, locations. And I think the difference, what I tell people with me, is the moment that spirit communicates its information, I trust it at the millisecond. I never processed doubt into what they were saying. And I think that's why it comes in faster, because I don't analyze it. I just completely move it into truth, and I move it into what they want me to communicate. And they know that. They know that clearly. So, yeah, so it's a process.
So I'm curious, and you've probably been asked this a lot, but you say that you've had this gift since you were really young and growing up. So how did you, you mentioned burying the dolls to help the spirits, but how did something happen to you as a little kid that it triggered this, or did it just was always there?
So because I saw spirit, and I sound the vibration of spirit before I was even born, like in my mom's stomach, and I can hear her vibration. And in that instant of being in my mom's stomach, there was something that resided with me that it was like, what am I doing here? Like, I had an awakening, knowing that I was a spirit coming from another place and being somewhere that I was like not quite happy. So it's a different awareness. But then when I was 5 years old, I was in a hospital. I split my leg open pretty bad, and in this other area, like behind me, I can hear the spirits telling me that this young baby was only like 3 years younger than me, was going to pass on, and it was dying, and what happened to it. So it started young. So then it just started a complete communication on a constant basis of information. So it's like always listening, always taking in the information, and not. The Spirit always says you learn a lot by listening, and then it just never stopped. And then I just rolled out with all the information and wanted to seek it out and wanted to discover it. So that's how it started.
So I'm curious, did you have anyone you could talk to about it, or do you just...
No, nobody. And I think it really came when I was in my teens, and my grandmother's husband, my grandpa passed away and she remarried. And I had this knowing, and I would just say things in a pure way. And it was just, I looked at him, and he sat down in my grandpa's chair, and I just said to him, if you sit in that chair, you're going to die in it. Like in just a 10-year-old, like so severe, so direct that, he's like, oh, I don't like you. He died in the chair. And so it just, it got uncomfortable. My mom preferred me not to go to church after me saying these things, and she couldn't. They did testing in it. I was probably 5, 6. They had all these wires over my head. They wanted to figure out what was going on, and even in that process, when I went to Denver and they wanted to just check all my brain waves and see what was going on in activity, I saw spirit in the room, and they're saying, "You're not going to go to sleep because they're not going to get the information that they seek. So we need you to stay awake." And I did. I never went to sleep. Never got it. So there was all these unusual situations.
Well, that's amazing, and it seems like they did you a favor, like, because I was raised out of the dogma, so I don't have all that to erase and deal with, and it seems like they kind of did the same thing for you with your mom's version of, yeah, we're not taking you to church.
Right.
Kind of like you were spared as well from being indoctrinated with all the dogma.
Well, they were trying. I mean, it was. I was raised a Quaker. They call it the Friends Church, and I just didn't buy into it. I was like, no, not doing it. Not. I just didn't. I didn't sense it. I didn't feel. I'm going to tell you, at a young age, when I would see a picture of the white Jesus, I was like, that's not Jesus. I didn't buy it at a young age. Like, that's not him. So I came in like analyzing everything and wanting this energy that just guides you to the trueness of things. And then your mind wants to figure it out. So I'm still on that path of, sometimes I'm very subtle and quiet, but I'm thinking, processing, and analyzing and seeing. So that's the way it kind of works for me.
So I'm curious, because you mentioned predictions and that you have some and that you do all that. So when did you start realizing, one, that you could do predictions, and two, when did you figure out, okay, Spirit's now telling me now's the time to go public with these predictions. Let's start putting them out live.
That was defiance. It was, even on mediumship, I defied doing what they wanted me to do. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. You just have this argument going on, and I was when you have those aha moments that you speak it, say it, and then you see it come to life. So early 20s, and then you got into my 30s, and then 40s really hit even harder, where it just rolled over even harder. And then I think all of a sudden I started doing drawings and describing and how they look, and then getting involved in cases and the environment of the cases and how everything looked. I look at things. You see remote viewers, they talk and they look at things from a distance. They see a water tower. They see a water tower. For remote viewing, they showed me to look at things in perceptions of levels. And you need to look at the water tower, but you need to look at the bolts and the rust on the water tower from a different view of remote viewing. So I looked at it different. I wanted the details, and that's how a lot of cases that I've worked on, I looked at details. So everything with this in details of the fine lines, the smells, the scents, were, I felt, important. So as that evolved in the 30s, when I was in the 30s and 40s, it just got stronger. And the more I did, the more I saw. It's like opening a door that I tell people you can't shut once the door's open.
Right.
Because the information is there and you can't shut it. So, and I've done cases that do remote viewing that actually led to the locations of where the body's at, the environment. And then I got into another step, which was the descriptions of how the suspects look before it's even released to the public, or I just stay in that information first. I don't analyze documentation with what the public says it is. I go by what spirit says it is first, and it's just rolled out from there. And so I wanted to do it, but I wanted to make sure I was going to be right on this and not waste people's time and effort. So spirit know I needed the verification. And then predictions is just this constant conversation, constant nourishment of information. It's like a relationship that I have with the constant being that gives you the information. It's nonstop.
That makes sense. And I was thinking about as you were talking about, taking it to the one level deeper to where you're seeing the screws and bolts. And I was thinking like, yeah, if you're in a city or an area that has, say, 4 water towers, and you're like, well, yeah, it's a water tower. They're like, well, great. That narrows it down to 4 places.
Yeah.
But if you go, well, the water tower has like rust buildup on these nuts and bolts over here, they may be like, well, there's only one water tower that hasn't been freshly painted that could possibly have rust. And so it's like you just totally narrowed down the search from 4 places to the place.
Right. Yeah, so like when I do world prediction stuff, there's a struggle sometimes and how they translate, because a lot of sometimes the way I do it, people find very confusing, but I don't change the words or how they download it. I just expect eventually how it's downloaded will be presented and people will understand it. So just use an example is because it was just the past 2 days, and I just want to use this example because it's easier to explain it this way. So I did something a year ago, bridges and buildings, the falling, that's going to be dismantled, and then 2 days ago,
right,
or a day ago, they sent that one. Yeah, that's when I did February of 2023. That bridge, and then 2 days ago, people. It's not that I'm out looking for the verification. That people show me, or they send it to me, and like, this has been verified. And then I've done the California. I warned people about that for 3 or 4 years. And then we were in a consistent pattern of it deteriorating in the ground and the storms and where it's located. That's all on Instagram. So it's just a constant communication.
Right. And so I find it interesting too that, and looking at what your prediction is, especially with this one saying, focus on all city bridges and buildings, because there's talks about now people are saying, well, yes, the bridge was hit and stuff happened there, but there's something else going on here on another scale. And so it's like you were seeing that. And
Yeah.
So it's like you were telling people, yeah, you can look at the
the details behind why they're doing it. Like the bridges are part of the plan to dismantle, to bring it down, and also isolate an area so they can't go back and forth for a certain time, because we're going to push an isolation in the inner cities so they can filter the dark cabal, negative ones, and trap them like a rat in the cities. And that's the whole thing. You've already seen it at the White House. They isolated, they put the fence around it, they put guards on it. You're going to see white tents, white buses. That's why I talked about these white buses 3 years ago. And I've talked about it for a long time, and now they're everywhere. So we're going to go into a process that you're starting to see: isolated areas, the military fencing up, white tents up, white vehicles, rented vehicles, whatever you want to call it, and they're venting people, getting their information and deciding where they need to go out from there. So you're going to see more of it. It's going to happen more and more.
All right, I'm just wanting to, as we're talking about the white buses, switch to a bigger view. I figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, the inner cities, the helicopters, and the black little thing on the side is actually a white tent, and then the white buses. It's all part of the process to contain, get information, filter, and then go from there, and then decide from there what they're going to do with them.
So how do you, once you have these, like, say, predictions or solving these cases, so to speak, by remote viewing and locating the body or the person if they're alive, if that happens, how do you go about letting go of it?
The instant I do remote viewing, I do not tie any of my left brain or emotion, my own personal attachment to it. The instant that I do remote viewing, I'm never attached to it. And if you are attached to it, that emotion side's going to start to come in, and then you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. So I do not tie emotion to it. I don't put my personal opinion on the left side at all. I keep it only what is coming in and what are the details that need to be seen.
Right. And so I want to take a moment right now, because in full transparency, I had one thing I asked you if we could talk about, and I feel like now would probably be a good time to address this with everyone that's watching, and that is, what is Nasara Jasara?
To my mind, to spirit, one side is the guidelines in the abundance of money that's coming in, and how it's going to come in levels, and how it's going to be revealed. And then you have the other side that has to do with the whole world that is connected all together in regions, and how those are going to attach in regions and fund each other in a fairness, like a council that's restarting, restimulating. And it has to start to give money to stimulate a new economy. You have to get people to spend it. You're going to have to see that happening. So you got people looking at this whole thing that they think is just a day, 24 hours, and it's a checklist what needs to be done. And when you're getting close to the money being funded, it has to do with those guidelines coming out, which is the treasury notes. They have to present it to the public what they can do and what they can't. People, and people think it's just something. It's not an app, that you push a button and it's going to be there. It has to do with taking a financial new process, doing it for the people, and then doing it worldwide and connecting those different languages and having agreement of trust and funding and telling everybody that there's going to be a fairness. That's not an easy process. And so once that green light, I think everybody's going to get paid at the same time. I really do. I believe they're all going to be standing at that green light and getting funded at the same time. That alone, when that happens, creates an energy upon Earth that rises, and a burden is gone. So you have two sides of it that are, and that's a lot to do, and it's so when people say, how's this going to go down? What's next? And the whole thing is, what I'm waiting for, part of this is the IRS, the old regime, to identify that this is programs that are not going to be in the new system, and that it's part of the old regime. So the dismantling part to witness is an important process for our conscience to accept that. Then understanding, like I say, what's behind this. There's nothing you can look back on. There's nothing, because it's not there anymore. There's no money in there anymore. You have to go across the Golden Bridge. We have to take that chance to put these, I call it 4 regions, 4 angels together, and have them work as a society. And this is the hardest part, is the ones that you've seen that have controlled people's money. You have to push them back and tell them you are going to be limited in this, and you are not the front runner, which I'm talking about the banks. And now the people can connect with the quantum system, and they can make the decision on what is best for them. That's going to be a hard process for humanity to accept, that no one is trying to browbeat them into what they have to sign, or they have to sign off on, or what they have, the contract. That's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. So for the future, I'm looking for the guidelines, the notes for the Treasury Department to announce and present how we can spend, not overindulging, knowing that to get to a new system, you have to be on a fairness level. Once that is presented, and then you see the dismantling, like the IRS, that it's completely gone, then you know what's coming. And then the debt. When you have something that's completely dismantled, it's not coming back. It just shuts down. It's done. The old debt's paid off. Once that's paid off, you're dealing with the elders on that process too. Once that gold is presented to us, that everything's about 100% gold, and that's where we talk about the banks. They had to have a certain percentage, I think it was 30%, that they had to have to be at these certain levels. And they couldn't use us as their certificate. They couldn't use our physical body as their bond anymore.
So I kind of agree with Teresa de la Vega on this. Is so ready, cannot wait to utilize the gifts, talents, wisdom, etc. for the best, highest good of all involved. Been in the waiting room long enough, and that's one of the things too that I feel like, it's like a carrot that's been dangled in front of us.
Exactly.
That people are like starting to take the opinion of, is it ever going to happen? And I think they're losing faith in it.
They are. You know why? Because there's no communication. There's no communication. But to get this done, if they exposed everything, they would never be able to get it done. And that's why I say, and Alex Collier would tell you, I say, that I've said it, I believe that the military is not going to tell anybody. I've said it 100 times. And once you know what's really going on is you're going to have 4 of those service generals on a podium and telling you what we're going into. You got 24 hours to get your ass home. You're going on lockdown. They don't have to explain it. They just got to tell you where you need to be. And if you're on the streets and we're doing in lockdown, that's what's going to happen. This whole process that you see that they want to lock down for 3 days has to do nothing with an eclipse. Nothing to do with that. It has to do with doing what they've already started, that they're already doing. It's not when it started. It's already started to go into neighborhoods, to pick out the ones they had to pick out, arrest the ones they got to arrest. They have it all. They literally do. And so we're looking at a level that what they want to show us. And that's the frustration, because they can't show us everything. It's set in a way that you have to dig deep. You have to look at things in a different way, because we're at the edge where everybody's frustrated and they're holding on, and they're at the different edge. People are like, I can't go much farther. And I would say the council knows this, but you have to look at when this started and what they threatened you and told you where you're going to be at this time, and you're not. You're at a point. You're not confined. You're not in some camps. You made it through. So we've made it this far, and this is a very irritating phase in a very process that we just want to push it over. But the last part of everything that's going on, those critical details are so important. And so what they were talking about, which I listened spiritually, about these contracts being signed and everybody agreeing, because it does have to be an agreement. It also has to be agreement of no wars. And everybody's all about, so I use Trump and I call him the shepherd. He is the peacekeeper, and he's also the ambassador of that money. That's because he earned the position through what he's done, what he's shown each of those 4 regions, what he can do. It's not, they have to, they had to see it. They had to trust it, and that's where we're at. And so, so we're at the verge of the end. We just can't stand it anymore. We can't stand the energy. We can't stand how far it can go, where we're at. This is like, we're at a phase, the chalkboards syndrome right now. We're so irritated. We're so irritable. We're so over it. And we're just like, just shut it down. But the thing is, when that does happen, that river is going to turn into a wave, a futuristic process going to go fast. And they're not going to be able to keep up. And then all the details of information that has to come out and all the videos that have to be shown. So I'm looking at people going, be careful what you ask for because it's coming. And then when you're going to have to take it in dosages because it's going to hit hard. And now you can feel that energy changing. You can feel that door opening. And I think the biggest process is when you saw the fake king put down, removed. And let's checkmate. So everything from here out is about dismantle. And making sure all the lights are aligned. Everything's ready to go in the green light. And we're here very irritated and very annoyed and just holding up everything. And we're just ready to all go, let it go. That's the frustrating part.
And I kind of can't help but wonder, talking about like the deep state being cornered, are they making this process be somewhat dragged out so that we will sit there and start
looking at it, analyzing it, yes.
And therefore they win. And so how much, we always say all needs to be in line with it, but is it that all needs to be aligned for it to start? Or
no, there's a certain percentage that's awake, but there's a certain percentage, as I've said this, are not going to wake up. What they're going to do is they're going to follow the ants that go start leading in a direction. They're not independent thinkers, they're just followers. And then they're going to shift with the followers turning that direction. There's a certain percentage of mindset that's not free thinkers. They don't take the risk.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of people who are talking about, and the reason I ask that is a lot of disclosure people are saying, yeah, we're needing people to wake up so this can happen. And a lot of people I've been hearing that, are like awake are like, how many more people do we need to wake up? Why
I don't
do we
think
need
it's
to
at that stage anymore.
So I'm glad to hear that because
yeah, I don't think
like
it's at that stage. I think we're already past that. You're at the process right now that it's a denial because these ones that are in the program, they can only trust what they've been programmed to trust. Do you understand?
Yes.
You're putting an idea that is not in their concept, and it's too much for them. And those are that army of ants that's just going to change and follow everybody else. There is not awakening. And I feel like I've talked to Spirit about this. Where are those going to end up? And I did a picture of showing 5D and 3D going two different ways. We're going to separate because you already feel it happening. And the separation that you're getting with this process is the fact that they're choosing a different path. They will not be able to see what the 5D people can see. They're dormanted, and they are choosing that path. And the Spirit said this to me a long time ago. There's 3 levels of understanding. And that lower level of understanding is not going to make it.
So, and there's comfort in that because that helps a lot of us who have, like you're saying, been in this so long, feel a little bit of comfort of knowing it all hasn't been for naught. That we
Right.
don't need to constantly be waiting. That what we were waiting for has already passed. Now
Right.
we're in the next stage. And so that gives us hope of going, okay, so if we're in the next stage, that's this stage, now I get, okay, so we're a major step closer. Now I have new thought, new goal. And it's kind of, I think, is in a way is reinvigorating the hope in the process. And so it's like, yeah, this is the way that we're going to overcome what the deep state is trying to do and dragging it out, because we're going to be like, hey, you can make it 6 months, you can make it a year. We know it's coming. You can't
Right.
stop it. And it's like, you mentioned Trump, and his big catch line for the longest time was, there's a storm coming and you can't stop it. And it feels like that's the stage we're in now. Is
It is.
we've prepared for the storm, now we're ready for the storm.
Right. Right. But the thing is, you are going to see the minute the storm comes, these people also that want it will be complaining because they're not going to have their TV, they're not going to have their internet, they're not going to have their cell phone for a couple days. And then you got these parents of these children that they have brought them up on iPhones and entertaining them. Because there's that dismantling, dysfunctioning stage that's going to hit. So that's going to put a shockwave through the system. And I'm telling you, the military is expecting this.
Right.
You pull the program cord, and they don't have a phone to look at and tell them what they need to do and function and what they need to be looking at.
I feel like, though, the white hats have kind of figured that out, and that's why we're starting to see, like, I had the feeling that Hollywood and a lot of those networks have been infiltrated because they're starting to show shows and movies that are like, wait, this is not your normal. Wait, where did this come from? Like, and one example I know from my personal viewpoint is, the movie Dune coming back out, parts 1 and 2. Well, Dune was a huge spiritual movie back in the 70s when it came out, or the 80s. I forget which decade it came out in, but nobody really saw the deeper meaning in it. And it's one of those movies that when you go back and look at, you're like, whoa, there is so much disclosure in this movie, and we were being paid. And I feel like, yes, people complain about Hollywood remaking movies, but I feel like this is one of those that's like putting in front of people's faces going, look, we're doing this. This is where we're at. This is where we're heading to.
Right.
So everybody's seen it, so that, so like you're saying, when the phones go down and everything, people are going to be like, oh, this is what they were talking about in that movie. And maybe not be so lost. And,
Oh, no, I just got a feeling. And I think if you push the normies aside and you push that liberal program mind aside, if you didn't have them into play, you would see this in a very clear view. The stress of it would be easier. How everything needs to be implemented would be easier. You've got to push that aside because, well, that's what the military's preparing for, is those reactions of how they have to handle them and how they have to deal with them, because society has programmed them to react and not think.
Right. And one thing I'm kind of curious to get clarity on is, like you were saying, in the 3 days when, it may be a lockdown, that people need to be homes or need to be where they're at for this to happen. If you're not where you're supposed to be,
then that's what the military's for, direct you. This is where you need to go as soon as possible, and you need to get there as fast as. That's why the military is going to have to be there, because you have to understand, people are going to go back to what they know. They're thinking, okay, things are going to be shut down, and we're going to be able to go through cities and ravage through them. That's not going to happen this time. They're not going to play around. You're going to see some military force handle those people in a different way. So they're about to see what our military can really do on dealing with situations, and they've been trained into. So it's one of those things. Go ahead and try it. You're not going to get away with it, and you're going to see it. Once they start to see the chain effect of that not happening, they're gonna shut down. Like, I'm going to tell you, like you've seen these 4 prisoners in Russia and how they killed all those people. And what I've heard, that how their interrogation is completely different from what ours is. They're severe, but people's knows Russia's not going to take any crap in any way, in any form. We don't have those type of situations, but I'm using that as an extreme example. And we're going to hit a range that makes them understand this is the structure that's going to happen. There is no choice here. There is no freaking out. We will isolate you, we'll contain you, and they're not going to utilize their time wasted on someone that's freaking out. They know what to handle them, they know where to put them, and they know where to ship them off.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Okay. I was more thinking along the lines of, because I'll say I was in another state traveling, couldn't get back, so I'm not going to miss my opportunity around getting this. I
think they're going to tell you have 24 hours to be somewhere. If you're not somewhere, we will find somewhere for you.
Okay.
It is not going to make a leeway for all these people that are traveling. If you're stuck in an airport, and that's what it's going to have, they are going to be tearing down for 3 days. I'm just telling you, they're going to give you a certain amount of time to get where you need to get.
Okay. And Divine Illumination 333 has a question for you along these lines. And they're saying, would it be correct to say that we're on a higher timeline for the fog/love wave? I'm just getting into jumping timelines.
Right.
Also, do you feel we will now bypass the QFS payout and go to a no money reality?
No, we are going to go to, because Spirit kept saying you have to see the fruits for which your ancestors have given on their backs. We have to see the fruits, okay? And so that's to a certain pyramid of time that we are going to be in. And then making a choice when we go into the 5D, because I don't think we're in the 5D. Some of us can reach that in a very easy process. But this is where this past weekend, I told people, you're feeling that buzzing in the ear. I keep talking about the voice that is connected to Creator, that we're all going to be aligned to hear this. There's a movement on your head. There's a buzz in the back of the ear. It's not hearing here, it's hearing in the back. That comes aligned. That is what is connected to Creator. That is what the negative hate. that is that whole connection within seconds that's created, that is connected to Creator, that resides within us. That is what they've avoided us to be in line with. That frequency, that vibration, that tone is aligning. And I'm going to use the 144 as an example. They're already there. They're already aligned. They're already tuned. And these people that are awakened, the ones that have done their spiritual work, they're listening. They're listening to the silence. They're feeling the buzz. My head's going off right now. Like, yep. It's coming in, and it's, you learn a lot by listening in a different way. And you zone out the chatter, and you're hearing that buzz of the vibration, and the human resonance are reacting to that. Spirit told me that there are going to be days that this is going to put you in bed, and you're like, I'm not getting up. No way, because it's coming in. And when you're open spiritually, your chakras are open, it's going to guide through you, move through you, and we're getting back to where we came from, which is that crystal diamond, I call. We're going to this crystallization of inside. All those chakras are aligning, and that crystal part of us is coming. And I'm talking about the ones that have done work. They are not pushing this away. They're writing it out. They're moving it in. They're interpreting the information. They're aligning with it. And that is what something that Trump has told you. You have no idea. It's coming. They're aligning. They're going back to their memory. And when it comes, and like I said, there's like 20 reflections of us, 20 particles of us of the memory. When that comes in, it's a big deal. So when that process comes, these spiritual masters, very humble, they're in it. They're listening. They're in the frequency. They're in that and these people, the ones that have had the inner voice, that knows that something inside them is alive, and they have to find their truth. They're all scattered among this world, holding the podium, and they are specifically presented on this earth in that area for this moment. And so it's a calling. It's
Okay.
online.
I just noticed we're approaching the hour, so there's a couple more questions, and I have a question as well.
Sure.
Do you have time to go longer, or do you need to somewhere?
Yeah, I can go about 15 more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing is Divine Illumination 333 said, perfect, thank you. I've cleared a lot on ancestral trauma. My grandpa and dad would have been so excited to see this really come to life in honor of them.
Right.
And my question is, you talk about a ringing in the ear, hearing the buzzing. And I have a couple of devices that I have that are quantum healing devices. And one thing I've noticed is, when you breathe in, like kind of like a hiccup or a short breathe in, my ear on this ear has like a tone where I'll think, oh, somebody just sent me something on a notification, but there's no notification. And it's real subtle.
Yes, it is.
Is that?
Yes.
What? Okay.
That is that. It's the knowing. And when last Saturday, I felt it like go up my neck, and my ear and the back of my ear was just like this, boom, boom, boom. And then my head, it was just on the right side. You can feel this vibration. Because when this is coming in, the ones that are awakened and are listening, they're writing this out. They're not resisting it. You got the ones that are not awake, they're like magnets, and this is dormanted, and it's not even in their scope. You understand?
Right.
So it's a resistance. And that's why you see them more frustrated, more annoyed, and they're submerging themselves in the old program. That old program is falling apart, and they're trying to hold on to it and make it function and work, and it's not doing it. And then you've got these people that are alert and aware, and they're writing it out. And they're not even upset about writing it out. They're just they don't even care. They're just like, I just got to follow what I need to do. I got to listen. They're not in a fear process anymore of this. They want it to get to the next level of this crystalline process. That's what's happening. And there's an inner language when this comes online that is connected to that spiritual system, that whole inner language. And people like, how? And Spirit always says English is not the spiritual language. It is a sound, it's a vibration, it's a tone, it's a knowing that is coming in, and you're accepting.
All right. And Teresa de la Vega has an interesting question for you, going back about the fog. And she says, will the fog have a soft, warm feeling to it? I've had experiences with soft, warm, amazing cloud of heat, no color though.
Yeah, it's a comforting warmness. And it's a subtle movement of slow motion, and it coming in a gentle. If there's a gentleness with it, that's what I would describe it. There's such a gentleness to it. But also, I think you're going back to the memory, and your soul's remembering that this is something to open up to, not put in fear again.
And so I'm curious with, going through this and everything, those that are awake, like you're saying, will be able to adjust and adapt to it and ride through it as they choose to. Is there anything we can do for those who maybe, like you were saying, are struggling and are not as awake yet, to where we can say, kind of help them? Or is it better?
The only thing that I can tell you what you can do with that is when they are looking severely confused, and it's almost like a program that they can't understand. All you can do in a gentle way, when you see that massive confusion, you go, listen, I can help you, but you're going to have to listen and accept the information that I'm giving you. Because that's the time, and that's why some of these are podiums of light that have that. And that's the time. That is to do with that crowd shifting and moving, just like animals do, like buffalo, they follow and they go up the hillside. So those leaders, they're holding the podium of lights. And I gotta tell you, the leaders that are holding podium lights, they're tired. They got wounds in their back. They're exhausted. But they are going to see this through. They are determined. They've gotten to this point, and they're not stopping until it's done. And they'll feel completely completed in a soul way of knowing they made it. They did what they were supposed to do. That's important to them, to see it come because they know they came in this world and they did what they were supposed to do, and they'll feel honored and complete at that time. That's what you see, this defiance of these ones that are holding the podium of light, because they're not going to feel satisfied until it's done.
So I'm curious, with there being a lot of hybrids around now, and when I was talking hybrids, I mean like people awakening to their star side or, spiritual side. Is there something we can do to like send energy or anything to the four, to, like you're saying, that are feeling the wounds on their back, to say, hey, we're here, we're supporting you, let me heal and work on that?
And the thing is, I always tell people, even if you deal with a conflict, a problem, or an issue, where you need to present that and how you need to send it is just purely sending light in that direction. Pure light, pure goodness, pure intentions of helping them. And it's like a circuit board. Once you do that, it rejuvenates that energy in a very global situation.
That's good to know, because I know everybody will have their own viewpoint, and so it's nice to have a kind of guide to say, yes, this is in alignment of what is beneficial, versus someone who may be like the wolf in sheep's clothing, trying to sneak in and say, oh, you got to do this. And then people start doing that, and everyone's like, wait a minute, why is this now faltering?
Right. Exactly. So
where can people find you? Because we're getting close to those 15 minutes, and I want to respect your time.
Well, mainly my website, which is www.jennyssight.net. And then you can also find me on Instagram. So those are two. And my webpage has all the information on there. And then I have a YouTube that mainly most of my website will lead you to the YouTube. So everything is connected there. And then I would say just read the documentation, read the information when you're on the site. So that's the best way to get in contact with me.
And for everyone watching the show, if you go to the description of this, you will find all the links she mentioned already there. So they've been there from the get-go. So I was happy to share that so that people can find you. And before we sign out, one thing that I'm finding I get a lot out of is, with the guests, I like to ask one question. What is a little nugget from your journey of what you've gone through that you would like to leave with people?
Spirit has your back. Spirit has your back. Your soul comes in with them and it leaves with them. They're the first thing that comes with you and the last thing they'll leave. So, and to lean on that and communicate with that and trust that. Trust the light that resides within you.
That is beautiful, and I gotta say I'm impressed, because when you your first answer with just Spirit has your back, I was like, that pretty much just says it. It's like it's there. It's like that's it. And then as you're expounding, I'm like, wow, you actually found a way to expound on that. I was thinking that was finite. That's it. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, and Gaia Love One says heart. Tammy Benson says never give up. Ren Rose says beautiful. And so we're going to sign out now and say good night to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Jenny Lee, for trusting in me and coming on the show. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everyone that's watching and in the chat room. And so, my little want for all of you that's watching this, whether it's tonight, tomorrow, whenever, make it a beautiful day. Trust in yourself. Take the heart, like Jenny Lee says. Spirit has your back. So live your life with joy and happiness and fill it with love. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Stay in the light.
Stay in the light. That's beautiful.